Jesus, what are you doing? Peter must have said to Jesus. This isn't what the people want to hear. You say that you must be killed and then you will rise again. What does that even mean? People are going to stop listening to you. Get behind me, Satan, Jesus responded to Peter. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. The moment was shocking and a little bizarre. They had already seen miracles performed by this man. His words contained the truth of God. They had chosen to leave everything behind and follow him. But now Jesus had suddenly become a total stranger to them, melancholy and grim. He was talking about their eventual defeat, not victory. It all had to be some sort of metaphor. Peter could not believe that Jesus really meant what he was saying. Jesus, of course, knew what God's plan for his life really was. He was not making it up as he went along. So here he was sharing with them God's plan well in advance of that coming day. That is how to hear and understand his shocking words. Peter unknowingly offered Jesus the very same temptation that Satan had offered Jesus in the wilderness. It doesn't have to be this way. You can become ruler of the world and have it all. It was once again a temptation for Jesus to use his identity as the Son of God to save himself from a world of hurt. He surely must have heard in Peter's words his concern for Jesus' safety and for their own. But Jesus was going to stick to the plan of God, no matter the cost, even if it cost all of them their lives. Peter just couldn't understand that yet. None of them could. Then Jesus gathered the crowd and gave them the worst campaign speech ever. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? We unpack those words in a way that they could not, because we have cheated and we have read the end of the story. They had no such advantage. The people who heard them that day expected Jesus to become their Messiah and to overturn the tyranny of Rome. But Jesus told them time and again that something else was going to happen instead. He would be rejected by the elders. The chief priests and teachers of the law would arrest him, and he would be killed. And then nonchalantly, Jesus also added that after 3 days, he would rise again. Clearly, Jesus had lost his mind. No doubt many of those who had followed him around and seen him work miracles decided now it was time to leave and go home. Thanks for all the fish, Jesus. We will see you around. And who could blame them? We, of course, already know what's going to happen, and so we should be ready to listen to him. Chances are, must Jesus bear the cross alone, so the hymn goes, and all the world go free? No, there's a cross for everyone, and there's a cross for me. Great song, but what does that even mean? Jesus never married, never had children, never traveled the world, and never held any sort of public office. At best, he was just a country preacher in a country that was a powder keg. Nevertheless, without a doubt, Jesus lived a meaningful life. He lived every day with his mind set on divine things, on his own divine purpose, on his relationship with his heavenly Father. When Jesus told the crowd that the only way to save their life was to lose it for the sake of the gospel, he was only asking them to do what he had already done, and that is to put their life in God's hands and trust him. God is the author of life. For life to have any meaning at all, we must read the manual and follow the instructions. It's only by giving up on everything that this world says is important that we can discover who we are and how to live a life that matters to God. That is what Jesus did. And that is what he says we should do as well. The cross has become the symbol of such a life. If we wear one, it should communicate to the world that we are willing to do what Jesus has asked us to do, to follow him, even if it costs us everything. That is the only way. By losing our life in this cause and purpose, we will actually save our life from being wasted in some other vain attempt to give it meaning. As someone else once noted, the most important stuff in this life can't be found in the stuff of this life. I guess the best question we should ask ourselves then is the one that Peter didn't ask Jesus. How can my life serve the purposes of God? He followed Jesus believing that Jesus was going to be the Messiah, the one who would save them. But it turns out that salvation also means transformation. Jesus saves us by transforming us into people who are willing to carry a cross if that will serve God's purpose, to suffer pain if it is in God's plan for us, to live each day asking ourselves, how can my life serve the purposes of God? Life usually gets filled up with all sorts of other concerns, joys, and sorrows, but it is surprising what happens when serving the purposes of God becomes the driving force in your life. That purpose then gets applied to all the everyday things that we do. It begs us to answer on a daily and almost hourly basis how whatever we are doing will serve the purposes of God. If washing dishes and cleaning the house helps make life better for someone, then surely that serves the purposes of God. If a kind word is needed and we are able to offer it, then that serves the purposes of God. When we can finally lay aside all of our human concerns and make the concerns of God the true focus of our life, then we will understand what it means to take up your cross. This is the cross of Jesus, and it is our privilege to follow in his footsteps. That is the way in which we also will be saved by him, through becoming like him. Jesus also said, if anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. His words have often been misused now to claim the superiority of the church and those who follow Christ. And we too often translate it to say, mostly, shame on you for not being a Christian. But in reality, these words are best understood in the context of living out God's purpose for us. Those who don't know the words of Christ can hardly be ashamed of that. It is only those in the church who know his words, but do not live by them, who have something to be ashamed of. So don't just recite the words, live the life. Take up your cross. In other words, pay the price of being his disciple and feel the pain of others in your own soul. And then do whatever good and kind thing you can do. All the words of Jesus would come back to them after the day of resurrection. Jesus quite legitimately could say to them then, I told you so. In the years that followed, each of them would also symbolically take up their own cross and go out into the world to share the good news. And they never regretted for even a single moment the life that they might have had if they had never met Jesus. Hopefully that same spark of his life is alive and well inside of each of us, and we are ready now to follow him. As the song goes on to say, the consecrated cross I'll bear, till death shall set me free, and then go home my crown to wear, for there's a crown for me. Be safe, and God bless you.